Before the beast of gambling, disguised as hope, devoured my life whole, my name was Sarah. I was 35 years old. I was the absolute master of my own universe, the kind of New York legend my friends talked about over brunch with a mixture of 30% envy and 70% admiration. My story was set against the backdrop of the Manhattan skyline, every frame shimmering with independence, confidence, success, and sophistication. It was a typical autumn morning. At 6 o'clock sharp, just as the sky bled from deep blue to a pearly gray, my internal clock would wake me. I'd slip into my Lululemon gear, pop in my AirPods, and begin my ironclad morning ritual. I'd run from my apartment, through the tree-lined streets, and onto the Brooklyn Bridge. Beneath my feet, the old wooden planks would thud rhythmically against my sneakers. In my ears, there was only the rushing wind and my music. Before me, the entire downtown Manhattan skyline stretched out, the Statue of Liberty standing sentinel in the morning light. In that moment, I felt like the world was at my feet, that my life was a vista of infinite possibility. After 5 kilometers, I'd stop at an independent coffee shop on the corner called Grumpy's. The barista, a handsome guy with a beard, would always have my order ready before I even opened my mouth. 1 large oat milk latte for Sarah. Go get M. We'd share a knowing smile, an unspoken pact between us. Back home, I'd take a hot shower, change into a meticulously chosen theory suit, and apply my impeccable makeup. The woman in the mirror had a resolute gaze and the faintest hint of a smile at the corners of her mouth. She was my greatest creation. My office was on the 48th floor of a skyscraper near Times Square, with L-shaped, floor-to-ceiling windows. From there, I could see the bustling heart of Midtown, the spire of the Empire State Building, so close it felt like I could reach out and touch it. I managed a sales team of 12, young, energetic, and in awe of me. I was known for my rigor, my efficiency, and my unerring instincts for the market. I remember one morning, we were in the final round of negotiations with a French luxury brand. Their representative was a notoriously tough negotiator who wouldn't yield on a single detail. The tension in the conference room was thick. I could see the anxiety on my team's faces. But I was calm. I smiled, and in fluent French, I calmly and methodically addressed every one of her concerns, diffusing them one by one with the exhaustive data my team had spent weeks preparing. Finally, just before lunch, she stood up, extended her hand, and said, "Sarah, your professionalism and charm have won me over. A pleasure doing business with you." The room erupted in applause. That evening, on my own dime, I booked a private room at a 2-Michelin-star restaurant to celebrate with my team. Champagne bubbles danced in the crystal flutes, and every face was flush with the joy of success. I raised my glass and said to them, "Remember this feeling. We earned this." Back then, I was incandescent. But this near-obsessive dedication to my career was born from a complete despair in my personal life. I can still feel the devastating blow from my third boyfriend. He was an incredibly insecure man who projected all his anxieties onto me. One winter night, we argued over something trivial, and he suddenly snatched my phone and began frantically scrolling through my call history and messages. His eyes were wild with suspicion and paranoia, as if I were some unforgivable sinner. I tried to get my phone back, but he shoved me hard. The phone hit the floor, the screen shattering. He pointed a finger in my face and spat the most vicious insults at me, saying that a career woman like me deep down looked down on all men. He slammed the door on his way out, leaving me alone in the cold apartment, staring at the shattered screen, unable to shed a tear. It was in that exact moment that I made a vow. I would build a kingdom that no one could ever destroy. A kingdom that didn't rely on the emotional charity of any man, but solely on my own abilities and the numbers in my bank account. Money and career became my only faith, my strongest armor. My parents, far away in their quiet Midwestern town, were the softest part of my heart, the part one was desperate to protect. Our weekly Sunday phone call was a fixture. I remember my mother once said excitedly, "Sarah, you won't believe it. Mrs. Hanson next door has been telling everyone that her nephew works on Wall Street, and she asked if you were single." I showed her that picture of you from the Forbes website, and she was so impressed. I just laughed it off and deftly changed the subject. "Mom, don't worry about me. Did you get the deep-sea fish oil I sent you? Remember to take it every day." My brother had already taken care of carrying on the family line, which gave me more freedom when it came to marriage. My parents were anxious, but mostly they were proud of me. They didn't know that one day, that pride would become the heaviest stone on my conscience. The turning point of my life arrived silently, but with unstoppable force. After my promotion to manager, I went from being a soldier on the front lines to a general in the command center. I no longer needed to meet clients in person or pull all-nighters preparing a pitch. My job became reviewing my subordinates' reports, weighing pros and cons in endless meetings, and making decisions based on spreadsheets and data. Suddenly, time felt diluted, stretching out into a long, tedious expanse. I began to experience the profound loneliness that comes with success. It's lonely at the top. Sitting in my 48th floor office, gazing down at the relentless flow of the city below, I felt as if I were trapped in a beautiful glass dome, completely cut off from the world. The threshold for the joy of success kept getting higher. Ordinary victories no longer gave me a rush. After work, I'd return to my large, empty apartment, greeted only by an endless silence. This colossal emptiness was like an invisible hand, gripping my heart tightly. And that's when gambling, a devil cloaked in the guise of entertainment, slipped through a crack in my phone's screen and into my life. It wasn't some crude pop-up ad. It was a beautifully designed banner embedded in a high-end art trading website I frequented. The image featured a model who looked like a Bond girl in a slinky evening gown, elegantly tossing a pair of dice against the backdrop of a glittering virtual casino. The tagline was intoxicating, where your intelligence and courage reap the most direct rewards. New users enjoy a complimentary $100 starting credit. It's just for fun, I told myself, a form of self-hypnosis. Think of it as paying for a thrilling movie. I registered with a little-used email and a random username. The $100 credit appeared in my account instantly. I clicked on a Baccarat game because the rules were simple, a game of pure chance. I bet the entire $100 on the banker. When the virtual dealer dealt the cards and the words "banker wins" flashed on the screen with a crisp, triumphant sound effect, my heart skipped a beat. My balance became $200. In that instant, a primal thrill, a pleasure gained without any effort, shot through me like an electric current. It was faster, more direct than the sense of accomplishment from closing $1 million deal. That night, I turned $100 into $800. Just to see what would happen, I clicked withdraw. A few minutes later, the money appeared in my bank account. This fact created a fatal illusion. Not only could I play, but I could win. And I could control it. This secret hobby quickly became the center of my life. I started playing secretly everywhere. During long, dull management meetings, as the CEO droned on about quarterly earnings, my phone would be under the table. It looked like I was replying to emails, but my fingers were frantically placing bets. On the subway ride from Times Square to Brooklyn, I stopped reading books. Instead, I was glued to the game on my screen, oblivious to the crowds and the noise around me. The nights became my carnival of self-destruction. I'd pour a glass of fine burgundy, sink into my sofa, and play all night. Only when the first light of dawn appeared would I drag my exhausted body to bed for a few hours, my eyes bloodshot, but my mind buzzing from the constant stimulation. For the first few months, my luck was incredible. I not only won back what I'd lost, but ended up with tens of thousands of dollars in profit. With the winnings, I bought myself a new BMW and even paid off a chunk of my apartment's mortgage. I started to harbor the dangerous delusion that I was the chosen one, the one-in-a-million genius who had cracked the casino's code. My day job became an irritation. The hard work of my colleagues seemed almost pathetic. You grind away for a whole month for less than I can win or lose in a single night, I'd think. This arrogance grew inside me like a parasitic vine. But for every gift that fortune bestows, it has secretly set a price. When the house feels the fish is hooked and has been fattened up enough, it's time to reel it in. I remember the weekend that completely derailed my life with chilling clarity. I was playing a high-stakes online slot machine with a progressive jackpot of $3 million. I felt so close to that number, convinced it was just one lucky click away. I started pouring money in, my bets escalating from $100 to $500 to $1,000 a spin. My reason had been completely consumed by the feverish belief that the next one will be the big one. Over 2 days, I not only lost all my previous winnings, but also blew through my entire personal savings of $40,000. When I saw my bank account balance dwindle to a pathetic 3-digit number, I tasted despair for the first time. That night, I paced my empty apartment like a caged animal. Panic, anger, indignation, a storm of emotions tore me apart. I hadn't lost to the casino. I had lost to my own greed and stupidity. But the most terrifying part of a gambler's psyche is the refusal to admit defeat. "It's just a bad run of luck," a voice screamed in my head. "If I just have enough capital, I can win it all back." And so began a frantic, desperate game of filling the hole. First went my salary. On payday, the money would land in my account and, without even a moment to warm up, would be transferred directly to the gambling site. My 6-figure annual salary vanished into that financial meat grinder without a sound. Visible cracks began to appear in my life. I started falling behind on my condo fees and utility bills. I stopped going to the dry cleaner, expensive clothes piled up in a corner. One time, at Whole Foods, every single one of my credit cards was declined at checkout. The stares from the cashier and the people in line behind me were like needles piercing my skin. I abandoned my cart and fled in shame. When my salary was no longer enough, I made a decision that, to this day, makes me want to slap myself. I mortgaged my apartment. It's just a financing strategy, I reasoned, like a corporate bridge loan. I went through a shady broker and quickly got a $500,000 loan. The moment the money hit my account, I felt no joy, only the grim determination of someone who had bet their entire life. That $500,000 was my final ticket to hell. I became even more reckless, my bets growing larger and larger. I tried to win back everything I had lost in the shortest amount of time. The result was predictable. In less than a month, that huge sum vanished in a series of almost won delusions. At that moment, I completely broke down. I locked myself in my apartment, unplugged the internet, and turned off my phone. I lay on the cold floor for 3 days and 3 nights, not eating or drinking. I stared out the window at the city I had once loved and conquered, and for the first time, seriously contemplated death. But just as I was about to walk towards the window, I saw the framed photo of my parents on the bookshelf. The proud smiles on their faces stabbed me like a sword. I couldn't die. If I died, what would happen to them? The instinct to survive, and that damn refusal to accept defeat, took over again. "It's not over yet," the demonic voice whispered in my ear. "Sell the apartment, pay off the loan, and you'll have enough left for one last shot." The idea was insane, and I actually did it. I contacted a real estate agent, and, to get the cash quickly, I listed it for 10% below market value. When my friends heard, they all called to ask what was happening. I choked back my shame and wove a perfect lie. I found an incredible opportunity to invest in European art with a massive return, but I need a lot of liquid cash. When I make a killing, I'll buy an even bigger place on Central Park West. They believed me, even admiring my audacity. The apartment sold quickly for $750,000. After paying back the $500,000 mortgage, I had $250,000 left. That money could have cleared all my credit card debt and given me a fresh start. But what rationality is left in a gambler who has lost their mind? I stared at the number in my bank account with a single thought. This is my last bullet. I have to win. I poured that $250,000 into what I thought was the surest thing, sports betting. I spent 2 days researching stats and odds, convinced my analysis was foolproof. But during one crucial NBA game, a single damn buzzer beater shot annihilated all my hopes, along with the entire $250,000. On the other end of the phone, my bookie's voice was calm. "Sarah, your account has been wiped out." I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, feeling like my soul had been vacuumed out of my body. I hadn't just lost money in my home. I had lost everything I had worked for over the past decade. But it wasn't over. I still owed a fortune to the credit card companies. I sold the BMW for $30,000. That money, too, was fed into the bottomless pit in less than a week. With nowhere left to turn, I began to cash in on my last and most precious asset, my credibility. I started borrowing money from relatives and friends. Every phone call was a form of self-torture. I called my cousin in California, my voice trembling as I spun a lie about a business partnership where the funding fell through. He trusted me so completely that he wired me $50,000 without a second thought. I called my best friend, telling her I was just short on a great investment. They all lent me money without hesitation. In just a couple of months, I used a web of lies to extract over $100,000 from the people who loved and trusted me most. Every single dollar of that money was stained with my guilt and their trust. And yet, I threw it all into the casino. The result, unsurprisingly, was a total wipeout. I was well and truly a ghost. No home, no car, no savings, no credibility. Just a mountain of unpayable debt. To scrounge up more gambling money, and to fend off the increasingly aggressive credit card bills, I turned to the loan sharks lurking in the dark corners of the internet. I knew it was poison, but to a person dying of thirst, even poison looks tempting. I downloaded a dozen predatory loan apps, applying for loans with my now worthless identity. Over a few months, like an addict, I borrowed $50,000 from these platforms. At the same time, I took cash advances on all my credit cards, getting another $40,000. This nearly $100,000 of life support only buried me deeper in debt. This past June, Judgment Day finally came. All my debts imploded at once. Collection calls came in like a tidal wave. At first, they were polite reminders. Then came vicious curses. Finally, there were naked threats. "Sarah, we know where you used to work. We know about your family. If you don't pay up, we will ruin your life." The final blow came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the conference room, forcing myself to lead the weekly team meeting. My office phone rang. The receptionist's voice was panicked and hushed. "Sarah, there's a call for you." The man said, "He said if you don't take it, he's going to call the police and call our CEO's office." In that instant, every eye in the room was on me. I felt like I had been stripped naked and paraded in front of everyone. I rushed back to my office and shakily picked up the phone. On the other end, a man's vulgar voice boomed my full name, my social security number, and the amount I owed. Every word was a bullet, shattering the last fragments of my dignity. I don't know how I hung up the phone. When I looked up, I saw everyone in the office staring at me as if I were a monster. The subordinates who once worshipped me now looked at me with a mixture of contempt and schadenfreude. That day, I knew it was all over. A week later, after another collection call came directly to the front desk and alerted HR, my boss called me into his office. He didn't scold me. He just looked at me with profound disappointment and handed me a resignation agreement. My hand trembled so badly I could barely sign my name. As I walked out of the building that I had entered with such pride for nearly a decade, the New York sun was so bright it blinded me. I was no longer Sarah, the successful sales manager. I was an unemployed wreck, infamous, and nearly $200,000 in debt. I moved into a basement apartment in a rough neighborhood in Queens. The room was perpetually damp and smelled of mildew. I locked myself inside every day, trying to figure out how to just stay alive. Find a new job? My credit was completely destroyed. Confess to my parents? I couldn't even imagine the fallout. Just as I was on the verge of despair, even searching online for painless suicide methods, I thought of someone, Linda, the girl who had quit my team a year ago to work at a nightclub to pay off her own debts. Clinging to a final shred of hope, I swallowed all my pride and contacted her. We met at a noisy fast food restaurant. She looked at my gone appearance without much surprise, just sighed and said, "Life's a bitch, huh?" I told her everything, though I still used the bad investment lie to cover up my shameful gambling history. She didn't call me on it. She just said, "Sarah, you need money. Fast money. The place I work, maybe you could give it a try." And so, through her introduction, I found myself interviewing at a high-end nightclub in Manhattan. The manager, a man named Tony, looked me up and down with a greasy, appraising stare, as if I were a piece of merchandise. When he saw the age 35 on my ID, he scoffed. "Lady, the girls who work here are young enough to be your daughter." My heart sank to the floor. But I had no way out. I looked him straight in the eye and, using the most sincere and humble tone I had perfected in my sales days, I said, "Sir, I may be older, but I know how to handle myself. I know how to read a room, and I can hold my liquor. Most importantly, I really need this job. Give me a chance. I will not let you down." Perhaps he was taken aback by the desperation and grit in my eyes. He mulled it over for a moment and said, "All right, you can give it a shot, but we have rules here. Old-timers aren't welcome. Whether you survive is up to you." And so I, Sarah, an Ivy League graduate, a former sales elite at a multinational corporation, became a nightclub hostess. My number was 38. The first day on the job, when I changed into the thin, sheer, short so-called uniform and saw the stranger in the mirror, wrapped in cheap sequins, I finally broke. I ran to the bathroom and retched until I was empty. Life in the nightclub was another world. The deafening music, the kaleidoscopic lights, the smell of alcohol, cigarettes, cologne, and desire, that was the entire atmosphere. My job was to sit next to pot-bellied men, flash them a professional smile, drink with them, sing with them, play dice with them, to keep them happy so they would spend stack after stack of cash. I met all kinds of clients. Some were polite, just there to unwind. Others were handsy, their words vulgar. And some, when drunk, would use you as a trash can for all their emotional garbage. I learned to endure. I learned to be numb. I learned to use alcohol to anesthetize myself. My once boasted tolerance for alcohol was now my only tool for making money. I would often drink until my stomach churned, go home and vomit until only bile came out, and the next day, I'd have to plaster on a thick layer of makeup and go back to smiling. The moment that truly shattered me came about a month in. I was assigned to a private room. When I pushed open the door, I saw a familiar face, one of my biggest former clients, a vice president at a financial firm who had always treated me with the utmost respect. Our eyes met, and time seemed to freeze. I saw the shock in his eyes, then disbelief, followed by undisguised contempt and pity. In that instant, I felt like a criminal stripped bare and paraded through the streets. I practically screamed as I fled the room, ran into the back alley, and leaning over a dumpster, I vomited up my guts and my dignity. I squatted on the ground and sobbed like a child. I finally understood. What I had lost was so much more than money and a home. I had lost my right to exist in this world as a human being. I am still working here now. I use the money I earn to pay off my debts, bit by bit. I've paid back some of what I owe my friends and family, but what remains is still an astronomical sum. I don't know when this life will end. I don't dare contact my family. I don't dare see my old friends. I have become a creature of the night. I am writing my story down with the last ounce of strength I have. I am not looking for anyone's sympathy. I only want to use this hollow, walking corpse of a body to sound a final alarm for those who are like me, or who are walking down this same path. Gambling is the most beautiful trap in the world. It uses hope and excitement as bait to lure you in. And then slowly, cruelly, it will eat your money, eat your career, eat your family, eat your friends, eat your conscience, eat your self-respect, and finally, it will eat your soul. Please, if you are reading this story, if you have ever felt that heart-pounding rush of a win, or that desperate madness to win it all back after a loss, I am begging you to stop. Right now. This instant. Do not wait until you fall from a 48th floor office into a filthy basement, like I did. Do not wait until you go from being the daughter your parents were proud of to a sinner who can't even bear to call them. Do not wait until you go from being a person capable of love to a commodity with a price tag in a nightclub. Run. Run while you still can. Run while your life has not yet been completely destroyed. Otherwise, my today will be your tomorrow. And this tomorrow is a hell far worse than death.